Welcome to the actual solution video for Objective 12. I went through some of the videos, started adding timestamps, and I still need to do a couple, but I promise that I will post the actual solution for this objective. So if you're interested in terminal challenge that gives you the hints, that's the ELF code if I remember correctly, then check out the previous video. I'm going to put the link up here, and we're just going to continue from the point where I've already answered sort of the question, but now we're going to really solve the challenge. This video is going to be published after the submission deadline, but I wanted to, for completeness sake, have the solution for this as well. So let's see. And with the terminal challenge, you only get one hint, but it contains two essential links to solve the objective challenge. So I'm going to open both of these in a separate tab, and this will guide us in the review of the source code, because for this challenge, let's see the objectives, we do have the source code for the site, and we also have the link for the site. Let's open this one. It over here. This is the site, but we do have, see if I can optimize a little bit the load on this browser, and we do have the source code. So if I click on this and download it, just take this to my home folder, and it's a zip file. Up the contents, and you have to go through some of the files, but probably the first one that you will immediately jump into is the server.js. So this is a Node.js based application, and this is the server-side code. Obviously this is the interesting one for us, so I'm going to open this one up in Mousepad. We're going to look into this one as we explore the site. And that's pretty much all that we need to get started. Now, at this point, you have the website. If you solved this one before the end of 2021, I think the counter was still up. And you can interact with this form field, but it doesn't do much. So if I don't know, test2@test.com. It will say thank you. If you submit it again, then it says email already saved, so it saves it in the backend. And at this point, what I did initially, I just browsed through this code to identify the various endpoints. There's also a /test site that looks interesting, so I went there, tried it out, and this has some additional functionality. Maybe this is incomplete, so there's a carousel here. The about us will just gets you to various parts of this page, and there's also a contact us, which is under /contact. So if you go back to the source code provided, you will see this endpoint as well. And there's also a post contact one, and you can explore a couple others. So if you try to these ones will require an ID number. Well, you can sort of guess that there's, like, for example, ID 1, but if you try to go to something like search, you will be redirected to the authentication page. If you fill out the form here, let's do something like test, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Hopefully no one tried that one before. This one later, and then country, it doesn't even matter. Save it. Then when the first time you fill out the contact us form, you're gonna have the data saved to the database one. It's going to place this here, and we can even try to find this one. This is under the post contact endpoint. It's this part of the code that gets executed when you do submission on the form. You try to do this again. Actually, I don't think that the fields here really matter aside from the email address. So if you try to do this one more time, you'll get an email already exists message, which is still under the post contact endpoint. And for a while, I was pretty stuck at this point. In my desperation, I even fired up Burp Suite and all the endpoints that I could reach. I fed into Burp and run just active scan on the site, and didn't come up with anything interesting. But I was reviewing the issues found, and there was one saying email address refactored. And I didn't really consider this an interesting one, but I took a look at it, and it was a / dashboard request, and it was having the title admin panel or something like that, or administrative panel. I couldn't really figure out what happened there, but I saw a list of the held contacts, so big table in the HTML code displayed by Burp. And I tried to get the same browser session, and I was able to access the / dashboard page. And I was very, very happy. That means that there's a way to bypass the authentication, but how? I didn't understand how Burp did it. I was poking around and tried to repeat the steps that I saw that the scanner took. And the only thing that really stood out was the email already exists part. So I went back to the code, sat down, and actually had to look at this part here. So we are here in an if statement, and we see that we're setting the session unique ID here. Now, this is the point where you need to use the first hint. If you go to the Express session npm page with the documentation, you can look for something like ID, and you will immediately see this part here. Be careful to generate unique IDs so your session do not conflict. And here, basically, the value is set to the email. And if you look at other endpoints here, the only thing that is really checked is this unique ID value, or detail, or edit, posting the edit. So that's the previous one is just a get for that site. For delete even, but there's an additional check here, so you won't be able to delete entries. Search as well, both accessing the site and actually doing search. Export as well, and eventually, if you look at dashboard, same deal. So at this point, where you have the email already exists message, you can just do simply this, which is pretty amazing. It's a very, very simple authentication bypass, I would say, but it's hard to figure out by just interacting with the site and even looking at the source code, which I have to admit, JavaScript is not my strongest suit. And at this point, you're able to poke around here, perform a search, like I mentioned, go back to the dashboard. You can try, you see the page parameter here. So there are a bunch of things here that you can do, and probably the easiest to discover the various functionality that you have here is to go in and again read the source code. So this took me a while, and I needed some gentle hints and nudges from a person that on Discord had the nickname of Bear and a Star. So I got some very nice, so this is a shout out to that person, however you really pronounce that nickname. I couldn't really decode it, so I would say Bear Star maybe, and give me some nice hints. The hint that I got from this person was to look at all the endpoints and try to identify one that looks vastly different from the others, that does something very, very different. So you can see here, not every endpoint does use proper parameterized queries. Some of them do, by the way. You will see some cases. Most of the endpoints will just use escaping, which is not perfect. And yeah, you can give it a try and try to bypass that one, but there's an easier way. And I don't really believe that others are really worth your time. If you look at detail, you will see this part here. If you just provide one ID, then it's gonna be here with a parameterized query. So that's it's not really the way to poke around. But there's one here that is really strange. And if you take a look at it, it starts with constructing a query. Then there's this raw function called where it takes the ID parameter that is provided in the background, and then it keeps adding additional ones. And this very first one, so the additional ones added, those are all parameterized ones, but the first one uses this raw. And this is the point where you need to use your second hint. We already gone through this one. If you search for the raw part, you will end up here in the documentation provided. So MySQL.js is a fully client for MySQL in JavaScript for Node.js. And there's a part here that says caution. We already saw this caution part in the previous documentation. String provided with the MySQL.raw function will skip all escaping functions when used. That sounds really juicy for us. That's the point of entry where we can really go crazy. And let's give it a try. So if I open up the first ID, for example, if I go here and look at the results, I'm just going to have one entry here returned. If I now try to add an additional ID with a comma, I have 2 entries returned here. Very interesting. And the place where I want to probably document here so I can larger if necessary. So what I need to temper is this place here. That's where the injection can occur. If you want to verify this, you can do just a double dash, which is commenting out the rest of the SQL statement, and this returns just one single ID. Probably it's not this one, it was under ID 3. So you can see here that these are 2 different ID values, but if I add a double dash, then this second ID is now not displayed. So our injection works. That was the point. That was the furthest that I could get before the submission deadline. So I just went back, started looking at this, and it took me a while to figure this one out. So I always try to be honest, and this one took me quite some time. Let me just look at notes, because I tried a couple of things, and the first thing to try in this case is something that it still worked. So after this point, your goal is going to be to put their union statement and start getting information from other tables. But to do that, first you need to know how many columns are returned in original statement. We can figure this one out based on the source code as well. If you look into it, but if you're doing this without the code, the next step would be, you can do multiple things, but the easiest is an order by and then a number. So you can order by the first column here, second, and as you can see, this still executes. And this was the puzzling part from, because I tried this one. All right, so I get to 7, and 8 is going to give me an internal server error. So that means that there are 8 columns returned with the statement. Fine, this is all good, but if you try to do the usual thing, and would most cases do something like this, you would like to appended here. If you do that, those of you who are just watching it for looking at an alternate solution, you probably know what's going to happen. This will give me an internal server error. The problem here is that I'm still, this part of the code, post contact, where did my L go? So I'm still here in this part of the code, and this portion will split the parameter, the ID parameter up by the commas for the different IDs, so this part can execute. This really breaks the code. So I need to do a union select here without any commas there. And one solution that I came up with was this site when I search for union queries without commas. And I don't know what's with the KFC commercial stuff, by the way. I'm not really a big fan of, I don't even like fried chicken. I'm not a fan of KFC. And I look back some of the videos, it also has the KFC commercial. So sorry about that one. I don't have a Scally box, an ad blocker. It's just totally weird. But these are the all-in-one take video blooper parts. So this blog post, and there are plenty of others, explain that if you do a join like this, you will be able to overcome the restriction of not being able to do commas. So I was like, neat, that's all I need at this point. If we can solve this, then we'll be able to progress. So the possible query that you can come up with is something like this. We have here, I put here all lowercase because this is just the filler expression, and we would need to, depending on what is returned for us, place within the curly or with the brackets, we need to place our actual select query that we want to execute as part of the injection. If I do this, I will be able to, and we already know that there are 7 columns here, so instead of doing this, when I do the union select as such, using joins, I will be able to see what is written back by the application, and I can choose one that I prefer to use for further statements. This was quite long for an explanation, but if I show you how it's done, then it will make sense. So the first part here is this ID1 parameter. The second part is the result of my query, and I see that second, third, fourth, and fifth columns are returned. The rest is just part of the query. So I can pick one, and I just going to pick the second one here. And the next thing I need to figure out is the names of the table, because the challenge talks about finding a to-do list. But if I go back to what we have in the source code for the database part, we see that the database name is nContact, so we're going to use that one. We have unique contact users, unique contact users and emails. That's it. We don't have anything like to do. Well, the table name is probably to do for the to do table, but to be sure, we can use the database name and come up with a query like this. And I still need to place this one into my original query that I used. Probably let's go back. But still need to use this in my original query that I used over here. I'm going to grab this and place it to the second position to get the table names. Done everything correctly and the mistakes. Then in the ID name part, I now have the table names. So I have users, like we saw earlier. There's a to-do one, expected, emails, and unique contacts. So there's an additional table that was not listed in the SQL file. And next up, I have to write a query to figure out the column names. Now, I saw others on Discord solve this without getting the column names. That's a bit tougher. The easier approach is figure out the column name that you need from the to-do table. Again, I'm just going to use this one original query that becomes the restriction for columns. I made a mistake here, so back. Oh, I had the semicolon and I here. Yep, this was left there. Original, but I had a semicolon at the end. And perfect. So now we have the column names: ID, note, completed. Completed is probably just a flag there, so I'm gonna leave it there. ID, I'm not interested. Note is probably column. Add a interesting for us. So let's do just a simple select note from to do. A little bit. Is this one over here? That's the original query, and this is going to be the request that we're sending in the application. And now we can see all the notes one by one. You have to read all of them. Obviously, it's the very last one here, which talks about offering the clerk job for the old man. And this is the actual solution for this challenge. I'm just going to quickly upload this one, but like I said at the beginning, I saw this after the submission deadline. See it in publication time as well, but I wanted to get this one out quickly because people are looking at the videos and it probably it's a challenge as well. This was one of the harder ones. I think this is the second hardest challenge, probably the hardest one per browser. Pretty neat, and the actual solution part went quite fast, but I spent way too much time on trying to figure this one out. Late hours probably didn't help, but overall this is a great challenge. Teaches you again great concepts, very interesting exploitation methods, and it was a ton of fun, so I'm glad that I did this. I'm going to upload this video, and you probably see other write-ups with other methods, so check this out as well. But that's the end for this video. Bye.